Theodore. He's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Foduck, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
There'd been a big storm that day in the big harbor. Now, Theodore and Hank love storms because storms always wash up wonderful new things along the sandy beach. Look, said Hank, there's an old fishing float. The storm must have blown it there, said Theodore. I'm going to hang it from my bumper, shouted Hank. Hey, a giant turtle shell, called Theodore. It's the same shape as your hat, Hank. Well, both tugboats laughed. That shell did look a bit like Hank's hat.
Okay, that's actually kind of funny that a turtle shell of all things looks like Hank's hat. I can't say myself that I found anything on the shore after a storm or whatever, because, one, I'm not very fond of the shoreline myself, but it does seem like it would be cool to find interesting things. And it seemed Emily had a curiosity for wanting to find things too after noticing Theodore and Hank's stuff. So she started to look for some things along the shore, but couldn't find anything. Until she saw something strange floating in a small cove.
Maybe all the good stuff is gone, she told herself. Emily decided to look in a little cove. What's that? She wondered. Something was just up on the shore. Something big and bright. I've never seen anything like this on the beach before, said Emily quietly. I wonder where it came from. At first, she couldn't wait to show it to Theodore and Hank. But then she began to wonder. It's kind of strange. Maybe I should just take it to the garbage barge.
Right, because that's the first thing I do when I see something strange is to immediately pick it up. That's a big no-no. Does anyone even see that it has a really weird label on the front? Who knows what kind of container it was? But she took it to Guysborough and eventually caught up with Theodore and Hank, who then came back with more stuff they found.
I found a fishing net, shouted Hank. And I just found a big old balloon that still has some air in it, puffed Theodore, all out of breath. What did you find, Emily? Asked Hank. Well, replied Emily, I found a big container. Let's see, shouted Theodore and Hank. Well, now, Emily felt sorry that she'd thrown away the big container she'd found. She wished she had it right up on her deck to show them. A container? Now Foduck was interested too. Where is it, Emily? Oh, replied Emily sadly, I didn't bring it with me. Well, I want to see it, Emily, said Theodore. Me too, added Hank. Please, Emily. Well, said Emily at last, I'll go get it. Hooray! Tooted Theodore and Hank, and Emily set off to get the container.
Am I the only one who finds it strange that a balloon just washed up from literally nowhere? I can understand the other items, but come on, really? And also, I find it weird that Emily is this worked up over a container. I mean, Theodore and Hank are basically asking her to flex. It's just a container, and no one knows exactly what it's even meant for. So Emily hurried back to Guysborough, but the barge had already taken it to the dump. Meanwhile, Foduck caught up with Cumberland, who was carrying the exact same looking containers.
Foduck, something fell off my deck in the storm this morning.
It was Cumberland, the giant container ship, calling from his dock.
Well, what was it?
asked Foduck.
A container like these,
replied Cumberland. Foduck could see the stack of big, bright containers way up on Cumberland's deck. Well, Emily found a container, said Foduck.
I hope she didn't pick it up,
said Cumberland.
It's dangerous.
Dangerous, repeated Foduck. Well, I better go tell Emily right away.
Well, that just took a dark twist. So these containers, according to Cumberland, are dangerous. That bears this question. What exactly is Cumberland loaded with that the Harbour would possibly want? Is it a chemical, a poison, an explosive for all we know? It could be a number of things. So Foduck hurried off to tell Emily as she was finally on her way back from collecting the container from the dump. But as she was coming back into the harbour, Northumberland appeared and the container fell off her deck.
Northumberland, gasped Emily. What are you doing here?
Just going for my evening sail,
replied the sleepy submarine.
Say, what's that gurgling?
Gurgling? Repeated Emily. And then she saw that the container was gurgling as it sank deeper and deeper into the water. Oh, that's just, nothing. I hope, she added to herself. Suddenly, a loud, urgent sound seemed to fill the whole harbor. It was Foduck, blowing his emergency whistle. Emily! Huffed Foduck, all out of breath. Where did you say you saw the container? It's right here, replied Emily.
Here?
Repeated Foduck.
Where?
I dropped it in the water, admitted Emily. I was taking it to show Theodore and Hank. That container is dangerous, said Foduck. It fell off Cumberland.
Tisk, 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 Emily. So caught up with showing a quote-unquote dangerous container to Theodore and Hank that nearly put you and everyone else in danger. Yeah, real smooth move there, Ace. I'm gonna keep saying, I'm as curious as anyone else to know what the hell is in that container. But Emily headed back to tell the dispatcher what had happened and was expecting for him to be upset. Not even close.
Emily, are you all right? Yes, replied Emily slowly. I think so. I think it would be a good idea for you to visit the repair dock, continued the dispatcher. The repair dock? Repeated Emily. Yes, said the dispatcher, just to make sure you're okay. Well, when Emily heard this, she was very surprised. You see, Emily was sure the dispatcher would be worried about the container, but instead, he was worried about her. I'll go right away, she said. Emily began to float away, and then she stopped. Next time, she said, I'll be more careful about what I pick up. Oh, I'm sure you will, said the dispatcher, sounding very proud of Emily. And I'm very glad you told me about it.
Definitely, though, in situations like this, it's always important to make sure you or those around you are okay after coming into contact with anything dangerous. But you would have thought by now that Emily of all tugs would be smart enough to already know this. If this had been towards either Theodore or Hank, it would have made a tad more sense. I don't know, I'm just confused is all. So Emily headed off to the repair dock, and soon after, Theodore and Hank came over for a visit.
Are you okay, Emily? Said Theodore. I'm fine, replied Emily. All shipshape. But if you're okay, said Hank, then why are you still there? Oh, well, since I was here, I decided to have my hull painted, explained Emily. We brought you a present, smiled Theodore. What is it? Asked Emily. It's right here, said Theodore. Thank you, smiled Emily. It's wonderful. Now I have something to look at while I'm here. We made it from stuff we found on the beach, Hank explained. Emily, said Theodore, maybe tomorrow we can find some more stuff. Sure, tooted Emily. Finding stuff is fun.
And that concludes Emily's Close Call. Well, I'm kind of mixed on this episode. For one, I do think the story is good for the life lesson it teaches, but I just don't feel like it was right for Emily. Like I said, I feel like it would have made more sense if they centered this lesson around either Theodore or Hank, given that they're young and may not know what's good or not good to pick up. I would have thought Emily of all characters had this figured out. But one way or another, she did learn a very valuable lesson that a lot of people can now take to heart. Young children especially. Again, anything you see is not always good to pick up, especially if it's flashing a big danger-looking label. Best to just walk away and leave it alone. I'm not gonna go too much into the music, cause nothing really stood out above the normal ditties. And for visuals, we had quite a number. The sandy beach, the small cove, Guysborough's dock, the Great Ocean dock, the junk dock, Cumberland's, and the repair dock. Also, nice to see little cameos made by Northumberland and Cumberland again. So yeah, good lesson overall, but as I said, very, very mixed about it. Next episode is Emily's New Hat.